George Lucas decided to avoid using a major studio and finance the entire movie of The Empire Strikes Back on his own. He bankrolled all $18 million into the production himself, with a combination of his profits from Star Wars and a bank loan. Although the move was risky, it paid off several times over. Obviously, he's made so much money off these movies.
Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to the show. James and I are very excited to get into Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, the second episode of our Star Wars marathon.
Every Monday, we're going with the original trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6. We're doing every single Monday. We just did A New Hope last week. We'll be doing The Return of the Jedi next week, but today is The Empire Strikes Back, episode 5. It came out in 1980. This one was directed by Irvin Kershner, written by Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan, story by George Lucas. It captured just one Oscar, Best Sound, as well as Special Achievement honor for visual effects. On IMDb, it is an 8.7 out of 1.3 million ratings. On Rotten Tomatoes, it is a 94% fresh from critics, 97% fresh from audience. Metacritic has it at an 82%. And just a quick synopsis of the second film in this trilogy. After the destruction of the Death Star, Darth Vader and the Empire are on the hunt for the rebels throughout the entire galaxy, who are brutally overpowered by the Empire on the ice planet Hoth. Our hero, Luke Skywalker, begins his Jedi training with Master Yoda by orders of Obi-Wan Kenobi, while Han Solo and Leia are pursued across the galaxy by Darth Vader and bounty hunter Boba Fett.
All right. Is this the highest rated on IMDb?
I'm not
out of
sure.
The entire Star Wars saga?
I can check. Let me see.
I think it might be considered the most popular favorite for Star Wars fans to say Empire's the favorite. I think it might be the most common favorite one, like how Shawshank's.
Strikes Back is 8.7. Actually, A New Hope is 8.6. A New Hope. Then Return of the Jedi is 8.3.
Wow, Return's that low. That's interesting. I think it's really great. And I really think Empire is fantastic. It's a great step up from the first film. And what it really brings to the table that A New Hope didn't have, because Lucas was so restricted and just had so little resources and money to work with, the pacing of this film is exceptional. The set design, the production, the locations. I mean, he had money and a real crew to work with this time. And although Lucas isn't the director, I read interviews with Irvin Kershner saying that like Lucas was like over his shoulder the whole time.
He's basically like showrunner of the movie.
Yeah. And because the visual effects in this film were so much more extravagant, I think Lucas didn't have time to focus on the day-to-day. And he also hired a producer to help handle the day-to-day with Irvin Kershner, which actually didn't end up working out. And I read that the producer he hired, I can't remember the name of the producer, but he was messing it up. And so Lucas literally had to step in. And he actually did direct some of the sequences you'll see in this film. But I think it was smart of him to be like, I need an experienced, seasoned veteran director, Irvin Kershner, who had been making movies for years, to basically take the reins of this project while I oversee the entire thing. So I thought it was smart of him. And I think a great decision was hiring Lawrence Kasdan to help write the screenplay, because Lee, the original writer, they actually passed away before this film ever went into production. And Lawrence Kasdan, his first credit as a screenwriter is this movie, which is absurd. Empire Strikes Back is your first writing credit as a screenwriter, which is wild. He's actually become a very successful writer and director. He's directed a bunch of westerns and written them, but he wrote the first script. He wrote the script for Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't know how Lucas and him got into connection with one another, because he didn't have any credits before this, but Lucas actually hired Lawrence Kasdan to write Raiders of the Lost Ark because he was also working on that story after A New Hope. And then he liked Lawrence Kasdan's draft of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then he tapped him to write this script based upon Lucas had obviously the story and the characters and everything, but he needed help with the actual screenplay, the dialogue. So Lawrence Kasdan brought that, and I think the screenplay is really strong. The pacing, like I said, is wonderful. The characters get a lot more development, especially Vader. I think that from start to finish, this is kind of like a breakneck pace. There's no really long scenes, and I think it's just like a really perfect from start to finish story.
This episode is going to feature a movie poster giveaway. All you have to do to enter this contest is share any of our episodes in your Instagram story, whether it's from YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever. Share it in your Instagram story and tag us at Raiders of the Lost Podcast in the story. We'll keep track of everyone who enters the contest, and you'll get a free poster from movieposters.com if you win the contest. So share any one of our episodes, whether it's the Star Wars ones or not, anyone, into your Instagram stories, and you'll be entered into the contest. Don't forget to tag us in the story as well. Back to Irvin Kershner real quick. He was selected as director for this film by George Lucas because we all know George Lucas suffered from so much exhaustion and was a wreck after A New Hope. That took so much out of him in directing these movies. It's literally like a 2.5-year sentence making a Star Wars film. Everything that goes into a pre-production, post-production, and filming-wise, it's insane. It's a huge toll. So he gave the reins to someone else, Irvin Kershner, who wasn't like a super well-known director at the time. He wasn't like the hottest guy. He could have had like Coppola, Spielberg, one of his friends do it. Instead, he chose Kershner, who actually taught at USC. He gave lectures at USC for film and was a mentor to George Lucas. So George Lucas chose him because, you know, he knows everything about film and he's everything about film except Hollywood. So he wanted someone that could just do a solid job at directing, which he did, and he was a big fan of his as well. And writing, the development of this movie took a long time to write, just like the original did, and it took a lot of drafts to get there. Now, I have a little info on the development of
I love info.
The Empire Strikes Back. So Lucas began formulating ideas in 1977. These included the Emperor, how to explain facial injuries Hamill suffered from an accident after filming Star Wars. And Lucas told him that had he died, his character would have been replaced, not recast, and Luke's lost stitches. So we'll get to that in a little bit, how Mark Hamill suffered a horrible motorcycle accident in real life, and they had to explain that in the films with his reconstructive surgery in real life. Hamill recounted being told the sister character might be Leia, which he found disappointing. Lucas had written Star Wars, but did not enjoy developing the lore for the original universe. Science fiction writer Lee Brackett, whom Lucas met through a friend, excelled in quick-paced dialogue compared to Lucas. He hired her for $50,000, aware that she had cancer. Like Anthony said, she passed away before the movie was released. Between November 28th and December 2nd, 1977, Lucas and Brackett held a story conference. Lucas had core ideas in mind, but he wanted Brackett to piece them together. He envisioned one central plot complemented by 3 main subplots set across 60 scenes, 100 script pages, and a 2-hour runtime. They formed a general outline and ideas that included the Wookiee homeworld, new alien species, the Galactic Emperor, a gambler from Han's past, water and city planets, Luke's lost twin sister, and a diminutive frog-like creature, Munich Yoda. Lucas drew on influences including The Thing from Another World, the novel Dune, obviously, Flash Gordon, and around this time, Kurtz conceived the title The Empire Strikes Back. He said they avoided calling it Star Wars 2 because films with 2 in their titles were seen as inferior at the time. Getting a lot of this information from StarWarsFandom.com. Brackett completed her first draft in February 1978, the titled Star Wars sequel from the adventures of Luke Skywalker. The draft contained a city in the clouds, a chase through an asteroid belt, a greater focus on the love triangle between Luke, Han, and Leia, which was portrayed as a damsel in distress, more in the screenplays, the Battle of Hoth, and a climactic battle between Luke and Darth Vader. The ghosts of his father and Obi-Wan visit Luke, leaving Vader a separate character. The draft revealed Luke had a sister. It was not Leia at the time. Han goes on a mission to recruit his powerful stepfather, and Lando is a clone from the Clone Wars. Lucas made detailed notes and attempted to contact Brackett, but she had been hospitalized and died of cancer a few weeks later in March 18th. The strict schedule left Lucas no choice but to rewrite the second draft himself. Though Brackett's draft followed Lucas's outline, he found that she had portrayed the characters differently than he had originally intended in his film. Lucas completed his handwritten 121-page draft 6 weeks later on April 1st. He found the process more enjoyable than Star Wars because he was familiar with the universe, but struggled to write a satisfying conclusion, leaving it open for a third film. This draft established Luke's sister as a new character undertaking a similar journey, Vader's castle and his fear of the Emperor, distinct power levels in controlling the Force, Yoda's unconventional speech pattern, and bounty hunters, including Boba Fett. Lucas wrote Fett like the man with no name, Clint Eastwood obviously, combining him with an abandoned idea for a stormtrooper. Although Lucas's handwritten draft included mention of Vader being Luke's father, the typed script omitted this revelation because George Lucas wanted to avoid script leaks about this huge piece of information. Lucas included elements such as Han's debt to Jabba and recontextualized Luke leaving Dagobah to rescue his friends. In Brackett's draft, Obi-Wan instructs Luke to leave. Lucas had Luke choose to leave. He also removed a scene of Luke massacring stormtroopers to convey him falling to the dark side, wanting to instead explore this in the next film. Lucas believed it was important the characters were inspirational and appropriate for children. Lucas's type draft is titled Star Wars Episode 5: The Empire Strikes Back. In 1978, impressed with his work on Raiders of the Lost Ark, like Andy said earlier, Lucas hired Lawrence Kasdan to refine the draft. Kasdan was paid $60,000 in early July. Kasdan, Kirshner, and Lucas held a story conference to discuss the Lucas draft. The group collaborated on the ideas, challenging Lucas when his made no sense. Lucas embraced their ideas, and that was the final script. And we moved on. It's so interesting to hear all the elements that were not planned at all after he wrote the first film.
It's interesting because Darth Vader, he was supposed to be a separate entity, and Anakin Skywalker was supposed to be passed away and a Force ghost in his original vision, also having the twin sister as a separate entity and not Leia. But I think those twists really, those twists and reveals really make the film special, especially Return of the Jedi when we learn about Leia. And then in this film, it's got one of the greatest twists of all time with Darth Vader revealing to Luke that he's his father.
Spoiler warning!
Spoilers! And so I really like the elements of them taking those seeds of ideas and then injecting it into the established lore and characters we had already seen. So it's fascinating to hear the writing process of beloved films, to see how different they were when they were first imagined by the writers and filmmakers. And what makes this film so different from A New Hope is the collaboration, is the collaborating with the other artists to really craft a story that was the best it could possibly be, and something that would make it really special instead of apart from A New Hope. And that, I think, another great collaborator that Lucas hired was the cinematographer. His name's Peter Shositsky. This is David Cronenberg's cinematographer, so he's done all of Cronenberg's films as well as a bunch of other films. But I think the cinematography of this movie is really, really fantastic. The best of the entire series, I would say. Great color palette, shooting anamorphic, the great use of the set design locations, and Shositsky really brought an element of artistry and dynamic imagery that wasn't in the first film. And you can immediately think of like the Hoth battle, the beautiful lighting of Vader versus Luke silhouetted with that blue and orange, and also the what do you call it when Han's carbonite scene, that contrast of colors, these great lighting techniques that weren't used in the first film, because the cinematography is great, but it wasn't like highly stylized. And this film, the Dagobah sequences with all that smoke and mist and the beautiful lighting, I think it really set itself apart from A New Hope in terms of the creativity in the filmmaking, and hiring this new DP really set the stage for them to make this really epic in scale and grand in visuals.
Cinematography is definitely a strength of this film. More strengths include a more serious shift in tone. It becomes darker. It actually starts to feel like we're in a war. The first one is great. It's so fun, action-packed. But we actually have our first ground battles in this, which is really interesting and fun at the same time. Luke stands out as the clear hero in this film for the entire trilogy, entire franchise going forward. Although they kind of abandoned that. What they could have done. But he stands out as this is his hero's journey. It's probably the most important of the franchise. It really feels like the heart of the trilogy. It sets up the emotional stakes between Luke and Vader, also Han Solo and Leia as well. The budget's much bigger visual effects, bigger sets, bigger props. Everything's just so much bigger and better. And visual effects are phenomenal in this film.
Better.
We have more Vader. We get to empathize a little bit with Vader despite seeing him murk a bunch of people with throat chokes in this film and force chokes in this movie. But we understand what his perspective and his beliefs, as well as is there a little bit of humanity stuck inside of there. We see a little bit of that.
We also get to see the back of his head. We get to see what's under the mask. Yeah. And we get a little tease of this scarred, pale head. And you're like, oh my God, what is that guy? Who is he? So he's not, I think maybe when audiences saw the first one, maybe they thought Vader was a robot.
Or even just a normal guy.
Yeah, or like I think many people might have thought he was a cyborg of some kind, because you don't see any kind of humanity, and so seeing that it's actually a person under that helmet was so important. And I think that the character development of Vader also not being the big bad in this, we learn that there is a superior to Vader, and he's following orders. He has a master. I thought that was a great touch to the character.
Exactly. We have Palpatine and Yoda are both introduced in this film, which are such integral characters to this franchise. We have more locations, bigger sets, more planets. We're not in the desert for half the movie because of budget restrictions, but we're all over the place. Elaborate sets, elaborate design, production-wise, the cloud, and the city, and the sky, and the clouds, and everything like that. Luke's training is such a great sequence in this film. Him with Yoda. The dark side, we get to learn more about these thematic elements of fear and hate and how somebody can be corrupted by the dark side and how Luke has to avoid succumbing to fear and hate to try to prevent being enticed by the dark side. We have the complete loss of hope, where at the end of this film, our characters have lost everything. We've lost Han. He's frozen in carbonite. The Empire seems stronger than ever. They destroyed them on Hoth. They're losing their bases, so it seems like there's a loss of hope. Luke lost his goddamn hand, so lots of loss at the end of this film. Han and Leia is explored more, which is great. And greater cinematic moments in this film, like the Luke and Vader battle, is very emotional, very intense. Probably the most important scene and sequence in the entire franchise of Star Wars is them two fighting, then the revelation of him being Luke's father. So much more emotional cinematic impact.
And this is a great point showing how important this film was to the franchise, because if the film wasn't good, Star Wars might not have become what it is today. It could have been maybe just like a dwindling franchise if the second one was so inferior to the first one. And so it was important that they nailed this one. And like all the things you just said, I think it's just a really fantastic setup for the rest of the series. And the film opens so well with very little dialogue, and it's that droid falling into the ice planet, and then we get the sequence of Luke being attacked by the abominable snowman, and then Han saving him. But there's very little dialogue, and we get the establishment of he, Leia, and Han are working with the rebels, and they have positions of power. Even Han is superior to a lot of officers. So I love this setup of the first 20 minutes of this film. It's really terrific. We get to see lightsaber use. We get to see some force powers, and it's really well photographed, really well framed. Some of the ice landscape photography is really stunning, and also, we get these great helicopter shots moving through the mountains that Lucas combined with the ships flying through, searching for them. Just the production value went through the roof, and I'm sure when audiences, because obviously the space sequences are so cool and they look amazing on screen, but when you do that same kind of effect on top of a background that is especially very bright, well lit in white in color, and it's hard to make it look as good as it does in space with that empty background. And so I think it was extremely challenging. That entire sequence fighting the walkers, it still holds up today. It looks awesome. But that was many people might not realize how much more difficult it is to do that effect, which is so much easier in space because you have the black background. I said we were talking about in the New Hope episode, you can kind of you can make people not see the errors and the little idiosyncrasies that might show up because of the empty background. But when you have a moving landscape and then a flying ship on that makes the special effect is so much more difficult to pull off and to make it look good and believable. So I think the first 30 minutes of this film is so impressive and really sets the stage for the rest of the film and gets audiences just injected with excitement and anticipation for the rest of the story.
Yeah, Lucas and the filmmakers had so much more to work with, so the budget was actually increased to $18 million on this film. It had a box office of $583 million. And in order to avoid sharing creative rights, George Lucas decided to avoid using a major studio and finance the entire movie of The Empire Strikes Back on his own. He bankrolled all $18 million into the production himself, with a combination of his profits from Star Wars and a bank loan. Although the move was risky, it paid off several times over. Obviously, he's made so much money off these movies. And then he showed gratitude. He shared his profits with the employees of all the production. And
share the load.
Shared nearly $5 million in bonuses with everyone involved with the film. And according to Lucas to Empire Magazine, at first I was contemplating selling the whole thing to Fox. I'd just take my percentage and go home and never think about Star Wars again. But the truth of it is, I got captivated by the thing, and I can't help but get upset or excited when something isn't the way it's supposed to be. I can see the world. I know the way the characters live and breathe. I wonder how he feels about the new trilogy. The movie premiered at a limited number of theaters, though, and those in large metropolitan areas only because it was originally released in 70 millimeter film projection format, which was just preposterous because these projectors are massive and it wasn't that common in a lot of theaters. So it was only released in those theaters, but after a few weeks, it was eventually released to standard 35 millimeter projectors and film for theaters all across North America and around the world.
And then on top of all the elements we discussed, what really makes this film special is the music. And I think this is the best score in the Star Wars franchise by John Williams, because not only do we get the themes in the music we already heard in the first film that we love, but we get a couple of my favorite themes. We get the Imperial March. Darth Vader's theme is not played in the first film, and it's so ironic because it's such a famous piece of music that you associate with Star Wars, but it's pretty amazing to think that it's not even in the first movie. You'd think it is.
I think Mandela effect. People think when he's coming aboard Princess Leia's ship, they think the Imperial March is playing, but it's not.
But it's not. So this is the first time we ever hear the Imperial March, which is just fabulous. It's a perfect theme for the villain and so recognizable. I think it's one of the most probably famous pieces of music made in the last 100 years. And then also we get Yoda's theme, which I think is really fantastic. I think it's so beautiful. It suits the character so well with the playfulness that he is mixed with the experience and wisdom he has. Williams somehow managed to put all of these elements of the character into the music, where you have these playful tones, and then we have these sweeping strings and incredibly large landscape that he worked with for the canvas of the piece. And I think Yoda's theme is definitely one of my favorites in the entire Star Wars series. And then we get obviously Luke's theme, Leia's theme. Han doesn't have a theme in any of the original movies, but Williams made one for the Han Solo movie. That's the first time we hear Han Solo's theme. But I think adding these new legendary themes really captivated audiences with what they were listening while they were watching the film.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the most popular song in the last 100 years. I'd probably Baby Shark's above it.
Baby Shark,
Baby Shark. I hate that song.
I hate it.
Now, something that George Lucas did that I don't think we actually didn't touch on last episode with Star Wars, the first one, A New Hope, was very unusual, and he actually got fined by the DGA, is he didn't put any of the crew credits at the beginning of the movie, which was the norm. Like, you had to say who directed it, who wrote it, who produced it, editing, all that and everything. But the Star Wars movies, they just open up in a galaxy a long time ago, or galaxy
far away,
far away,
way back when in the galaxy.
Galaxy a long time ago, far away, whatever it is. Someone's gonna get mad. I'm sorry. He opens up with
a long time ago in a galaxy far away.
He opens up with the crawl. And he got fined by, I think it was like $225,000 by the DGA. $250,000. Whoa, last time. And then, so for this film, he wanted to do the same thing. And as for Star Wars, Lucas wanted to place all the crew credits at the end of the film to interfere with the opening. He thinks the crawl is very important to these films, which it really is. It sets the tone, sets the mood. The WGA, the Writers Guild of America, and Directors Guild of America, DGA, had allowed for this for the first film because Lucas directed it and opened it with the logo for his namesake Lucasfilm. So he got away with it with like a loophole and a little bit of a fine. But for Empire, they refused to allow Kershner or the first and second unit directors to be credited only at the end of the film, fined by Lucas $250,000 when he ignored them and tried to have them film removed from theaters.
Sorry, that's the $250,000 I meant.
He was fined when he tried to ignore them. Because Lucas had followed the laws relevant to the United Kingdom where it was produced, the DGA was unable to sanction him and instead fined Kershner $25,000. Lucas obviously paid Kershner's fine, but was so frustrated that he left the WGA, DGA, and Motion Picture Association, which restricted his ability to write and direct future films.
Man, that's crazy. And now it's so common now to open a film without putting any of the credits in. But I guess there was a different time. The DGA, the guild, they want to show credit where credit's due. So I think it was very important to them to open the film. But also, it wouldn't work if you do 2 minutes of credits and then you do the text crawl. It would just be a lot of reading for audiences. And so, I think it's really special, that opening. It really set the stage for films of the future. So Lucas clearly was ahead of his time with how he imagined opening a film. And I'm glad he stuck to his guns, because Star Wars is synonymous with that text crawl and nothing else. Just the first thing you see is the yellow font. Bah! And so good for him. Kudos to him for just standing up to them. Unfortunately, the repercussions he faced had negative effects on his career. I don't think he cared too much about that. So it's interesting to see how it's changed, though, because now it's so common to open a film without credits, and I think the majority of films open without credits, you could say, nowadays.
It's up there. It's probably 50-50.
Just generally the company logos you'll see oftentimes.
And sometimes if it's an independent film, there'll be 17 independent film logo companies. Monkey Productions, Losing the Chair Films, Popcorn Addicts Movies, like all sorts of productions.
Losing the Chair.
Like
films.
Marcel the Shell had like 10 of them.
Yeah, there were a bunch.
And budget is huge in this film. Visual effects and props are exceptional. The entire Millennium Falcon was actually built life-size for the first and only time for this installment, because only half the spacecraft was constructed for Star Wars A New Hope, and just part of it was used for a deleted sandstorm scene in Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. The Millennium Falcon measured 65 feet long, that's 19.8 meters in diameter, and 16 feet in 4.8 meters in height, with the mandible giving it an overall length of 80 feet or 24 meters. The Falcon's weight was 23 tons. So they actually built this massive structure, this massive ship. Not to mention the miniatures in this film are so incredible. I mean, the Imperial walkers are just one of my favorite parts of the entire franchise.
Look great.
Still looks great. The battle sequences are exceptional. The space battles are just amped up. We have a lot of ships, a lot of things going on, lots of explosions and stuff. So the visual effects with Industrial Light and Magic, they just amped it up so much. And the budget for ILM for this film was actually $8 million went to the special effects with ILM.
That's amazing, because you have to realize, especially with the first film, it's like nowadays ILM is huge, as well as other visual effects companies. They have lots of employees, trained artists making these films with the visual effects department. But back then, it was just like a handful of people doing it by hand. So you can imagine how difficult it was, how time-consuming it was, why Lucas was probably so worn out after the first film, because they're literally doing it all in a warehouse. And so there's just always something special about watching these older films that pull off such incredible visual effects. And there's some shots in this movie that I think look like they were made today. Like the opening shot of that droid leaving that ship and then flying into the ice planet. We watched it the other day. I was like, this looks like it was just made. It's really impressive how the quality of the visual effects are, how great the quality of the visual effects are in this film. And it's really special. And the lightsabers, I think, were a vast improvement over the old ones. There's just so many elements. The Cloud City, just incredible visuals. It's just breathtaking to behold that this team pulled this off. And there's a reason why ILM to this day is probably the gold standard for visual effects and animation. Yeah,
up there for sure. And the Imperial Walkers, these are all stop-motion miniatures, obviously, designed by Joe Johnston. Inspiration for the AT-ATs came from Parasarantherium, an extinct genus of rhinoceros and the largest land mammal in history.
I gotta look this up. Do they have really long legs?
Something like that. ILM created models ranging from 6 to 50 centimeters. That's about 2 to 20 inches in height. ILM filmed the AT-AT using stop-motion animation against matte paintings created by Michael Pangrazio. All these Italian artists working on Star Wars in Spielberg movies from the guy who made E.T., Rambaldi.
Well, yeah, he hung out with a bunch of Italians, Coppola, Scorsese.
Because attempts at compositing miniature footage against live-action background footage yielded mediocre results. Additionally, ILM studied elephants to determine the best way to animate the four-legged AT-ATs. Although the stop-motion animation style gave the AT-ATs a jerky, staccato-like effect on film, ILM found this movement acceptable because the AT-AT's mechanical nature. The sound of the AT-AT walking was created by sound designer Ben Burt, obviously using a punch press.
Oh, cool.
Like Terminator.
Yeah. I love that sequence. And do you remember the video game?
Oh, of course I do.
So they had a Star Wars
PlayStation?
I think so.
Yeah, PlayStation 1.
I think it might have been PlayStation, but they had a great Star Wars game where that was
one of the missions.
Yeah, you enacted a bunch of the space battles in Star Wars, and one of the missions was I think you are Luke. I'm not sure, but you're using the jet and you're trying to take down the walkers. and you got to use the ropes, and you got to trip them up, and it was so fun. There were a lot of great moments of that video game. I think it's one of my favorite games we ever played, plus the pod racing one for Star Wars. Those were great video games. And I think, it's funny because I think that the video games that we played, especially that one, was we spent more time doing that than watching the films when we were younger.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so it was we gained a lot of familiarity with Star Wars through the video games.
It wasn't as easy to watch movies. I don't think we had the Star Wars ones on VHS.
I don't think we did.
Today,
I remember we would rent them at Blockbuster if we watched them.
But yeah, like I said, our older brothers weren't huge Star Wars fans, so we never really got into them that much. So we had obviously other VHSs that we watched a lot. Like The Never-Ending Story was like our favorite childhood movie.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
So we were more into like Spielberg movies, I would say. We never really got into Star Wars until later in our lives. But the video games were fun.
We loved Ninja Turtles.
The prequel trilogy really got us really into Star Wars for sure at first when we were young.
Oh yeah, because we were 9 when it came out.
9,
so
11.
Yeah, we grew up with the prequel trilogy, which is why I do have an affinity for it. But so I think that the sequel trilogy, I think there are a lot of great moments to it, and I do think that I am kind of alone in the outlier cast of I enjoy them. I think they're so well made, and I love the actors, and I like a lot of things about them. But I will say, especially the first 2 films, so I understand JJ kind of imitating the storyline of A New Hope to get people back into the love of Star Wars and the archetypes and the storylines. So I'm okay with Force Awakens following A New Hope so closely in terms of structure. But in terms of The Last Jedi, which I think has a lot of great elements, I do think that it follows the plot of this film way too closely, where you have the Jedi training with an old master while the other characters are evading enemy forces, where you have Rey training
very slowly, from a perfect distance.
Yeah, so you have Rey training with Luke while the others are evading that ship that's chasing them, and then obviously you have Finn going to that gambling planet.
Because corporations, man.
Because corporations, man. And so I think that following the storyline to this one so closely, the structure of the story was a misstep and a misfire. It didn't give us something new that maybe we could have had a much more refreshing take for the way you structured the plot of the Star Wars film. So I think that's definitely one of the biggest weaknesses to Last Jedi. It feels so similar to Empire, because Empire, it really works. Although you can still say, I mean, it would have been nice if Luke spent a little more time on Dagobah. It seems like he's just there for like a day.
It could be an interstellar thing.
Yeah, that would be great if that planet was closer to a black hole, so that it's like a hyperbolic time chamber where you can trade with Yoda for like months. So, but I understand the pacing is one of the strengths of the film, so you kind of accept that. But then when you see it again in Last Jedi and Rey's there for like a day, it's like, come on, she's gonna go fight everyone. Like, come on. Whereas Luke's just trying to save his friends. She's like, I gotta kill everyone, kind of. But
so for me, my biggest qualms with the new trilogy, obviously for the same reason, rewriting the same scripts, but that's what all these studios are doing with their reboots, their new versions. I mean, the new Scream movie was Scream, just new characters, contemporary setting. They're all pretty much the same. But the thing with me is the bond between the trio in the original trilogy is so genuine and authentic, and you can't help but love seeing them together. You always want them reunited. You want them to be together constantly because it seems so organic and natural, and they have so much chemistry. Whereas the trilogy and the trio in the new trilogy, it seems so forced, where they make us want them to be together. They make us want them to stay hanging out, and it's kind of like forced chemistry in a way. It didn't feel as authentic. It just seemed kind of rushed in. Ingenuine in a way. So like whenever the three of them were together, I was like, it's all right. Compared to when these three are together, it's magic.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because by the end of this trilogy, by the end of Return, you're like, these three are family, and they all really love one another, and you can feel that. And in the new trilogy, it definitely doesn't have that feeling or that vibe. It seems like they're just like, yeah, they're friends, and they're all just happen to be like important members of the movement. So I completely agree. They don't have that bond. They don't have that chemistry. And I think just keeping the characters separated for so long in many of the movies was a weakness, where obviously the three in the originals, they're not in this movie as much as they were in A New Hope. I think the only scene the three of them share together in this film is when Leia kisses Luke And then when the three of them are together, I can't think of another sequence.
Technically, they're not. Yeah, they're not together until she kisses him.
But pairs are together.
They're close by together,
and they're geographically pretty closely situated. But there are pairs together multiple times in this film, but it's really established in the first film, the trio, and then we get a lot more of it in the third film, obviously, once they free Han. Spoilers, but I definitely agree the bond of the characters is really a strength to the original series.
One of the strengths to this series as well, and this movie specifically, is the character development of Luke Skywalker. One of the biggest strengths, I think, to this film, Empire Strikes Back, for the entire trilogy here, is the development of the character of Luke Skywalker. In the first film, he's a very fun, adventurous young kid. After the loss of his family, he goes to take out vengeance for their loss. But in this film, I think one of the most important things you can do for your protagonists, for your heroes, for your characters, is to have them fail and fail multiple times, because it makes their accomplishments and success that much more meaningful and emotional. Luke is constantly failing in The Empire Strikes Back. He almost gets killed by the Wampa on Hoth. The rebellion loses the Battle of Hoth. They lose their base. He falls into Vader's trap. He fails at becoming a Jedi. He leaves too early. He loses his fight to Darth Vader. He loses his hand to Darth Vader. He loses Han. Han is trapped in carbonite. He's been sold away. He's taken away by Boba Fett. He fails so much in this movie. And it's important because it'll only make him a stronger character. And his accomplishments later on, and once he obtains his goals and succeeds, it'll be that much more impactful and emotional. Other characters where in the Star Wars franchise where they suffer great loss, for example, Obi-Wan Kenobi loses his master, Qui-Gon Jinn. He fails at defeating Darth Maul with him together. Eventually beats him afterwards, but he loses Qui-Gon. He also loses Anakin to the dark side of the Force. So it's great when your protagonists have immense loss and failures, just like Luke in this film. It's
a necessary requirement for development of a character. You need to have loss and failure in order. You can't just be all victory, victory, victory. So I think Lucas has always really understood that about his characters in the overarching storyline of this entire series. And you can look at, Anakin having the ultimate failure and then redemption. He failed big time.
about as low as you can go. Yeah. Killing your wife
and a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another example of deep failure for a lead character who ultimately becomes a hero at the end of the story. Now, before we get more into the episode, how about we head into our intermission?
Sounds like a blast, because there's still so much to talk about. Can't wait to get back from it, but let's have some fun. Before we continue, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast, besides using our coupon codes, is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. You get awesome perks like personalized messages and personalized videos. Every patron has access to a weekly bonus episode. $10, $25, and $100 tier patrons have access to our Discord, where we interact with you and have watch parties. $25 and $100 tier patrons get their own custom episode. You pick the topic, we do it just for you. The $100 tier chosen one patron is the ultimate tier. You get an executive producer credit at the end of main episodes, a personal watch party, and after 3 months, you get to have a segment on the show. Our patrons make the show possible, make it our full-time job, so thank you so much for the support. Raiders of the Lost podcast is brought to you by our good friends at manscaped.com. Use our coupon code Raiders of the Lost at checkout. You'll get 20% off and free shipping on your entire order worldwide and galaxy-wide, whatever planet you're on. Manscaped just launched their Boxer Briefs 2.0, and I'm telling you, if I was trapped on Hoth and I needed to keep warm and comfortable and cozy, I'd be using my Boxer Briefs from Manscaped, because they are beyond comfortable, so soft, so smooth, plus they got a little extra space for your junk. I also recommend their Lawnmower 4.0 groomer, which is basically a Millennium Falcon for your grooming needs. It has a 7,000 RPM motor, skin safe to the touch, waterproof, built-in light, wireless charger. You can use this thing in the shower at night. Manscaped's Platinum 4.0 package collection is the best deal yet. It includes the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear, nose, hair trimmer, body wash, 2-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, anti-chafing ball deodorant, ball spray toner, as well as boxers, and a shed travel bag. Use our coupon code Raiders of the Lost at checkout. You'll get 20% off and free shipping worldwide.
This episode is also brought to you by our great friends at movieposters.com. Use our special promo code Raiders10 at their website to get 10% off your order today. They have a gigantic selection of all sorts of sizes, framing, backlighting, as well as a library of pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable. You can get your favorite Star Wars poster to a classic film to Marvel, whatever. They got you covered. Use their website, movieposters.com. Use our coupon code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order today. And then we are also doing our very special movie poster giveaway with movieposters.com for this episode. So if you don't win the contest, be sure to head over to that website anyway. All right, now that we've heard from our amazing sponsors, how about we get into our intermission?
Let's do it and begin with the movie quote competition. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, this one's from me.
I imagine so. No, I'm kidding, because sometimes you do fan ones.
Yeah, quit busting my chops, man. Let me get to the quote. 50 years old. What a birthday. Goddamn 50 years old. Been on the force 20 years. Not a scratch on me. Not a scar. Got a wife, kids, a house, a fishing boat. But I can kiss all that goodbye because my new partner has a death wish. My effing life is over.
Lethal Weapon. It's only the great Danny Glover can do it.
Murtaugh.
That's a great movie. That's a good movie.
All time.
All right, here's my quote. The only time black folks are safe is when white folks is disarmed. And this letter had the desired effect of disarming white folks.
Great quote. Give everyone a moment. I think this is one of his most underrated movies. This is from The Hateful Eight.
Correctamundo.
Such a good movie. Samuel Jackson should have won an Oscar for this performance.
He's really great in it.
Absolutely
he really
incredible
is.
in it.
And he's talking about the Lincoln letter that he forged to fool white men into being friendly to him.
Talk that sis! Talk that sis!
He's just laughing.
She's so good in that movie.
Yeah.
She won an Oscar for that.
She did.
Guess this movie release year. Scream 3.
The best Scream.
Carrie Fisher has a cameo in
I'm
it.
kidding. It's the first Scream's the best one. Scream 3. I'm trying to remember the plot. Is that the one with the brother?
With Stab.
With the brother?
It's the one with Stab. The movie's being made.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. The movie. Oh, yeah. So the movie one. I think the brother is her brother is the killer.
Oh, the killer in this one?
At the end.
I don't want to spoil it for people.
It's freaking 20-year-old movie. It's okay.
Almost.
Oh, hint.
Oh, God damn it.
No, I was going mid-2000s anyways. I'm going to go with Scream 3, 2006.
Gotcha. It was 2000. That's why I said almost 20.
Man. Dude, you got me.
Tricked him.
Oh, man. It's my own fault for trying to take advantage of it.
2000.
What year did The Jerk come out with Steve Martin?
1988.
79.
Oh,
79.
It's an
Old movie.
Holy crap. All right. Movie pop quiz time. As we all know, Mark Hamill has voiced the Joker many times. Can you name one project that Mark Hamill voiced the Joker in?
Batman and Phantom Menace.
I don't think that's him. Let me double check, though. Let me double check your answer.
Wow, it looks like you really looked into your trivia question.
Well, I made a list of projects he voices the Joker in.
Uh-huh.
Hold on. Batman, Phantom Menace, Joker, actor. Let's see if Anthony's correct. Yeah, it was him. No, wait, no. Phantom Menace. Did you say Phantom Menace?
Mask of the Phantasm.
Okay,
Mask
there you
of
go.
the Phantasm. I'm sorry. Star Wars threw me off.
That's what threw me off, too.
Yeah.
I was like,
Mask of the
Menace.
Phantasm. Yeah.
There you go. So he's also the Batman, the animated series, The Adventures of Batman and Robin, Batman, The Mask of the Phantasm,
Great movie.
video games, Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham City, and Batman Arkham Knight.
I like when Bruce gets stuck in that like
The roller
theme
coaster?
park roller coaster place. That's a great scene.
Dude, we love that movie.
Yeah.
I want to watch it. I haven't seen it since we
It's
were
really
kids.
good. Yeah. Yeah, Mask of the Phantasm. Sorry.
I was like,
Star Wars throw me off. Yeah.
shit, I didn't even put two and two together when you said it.
Okay, here's my quiz question. How many acting credits does Bruce Dern have?
Like his entire life? 92?
192.
192. What was he, like a Yoplait commercial too? Like,
No, he was in a lot of TV when he was young. He was in a lot of like those cowboy westerns. That's why Tarantino loves him so much. He was in a lot of western movies and a lot of the cowboy westerns TV movies back in the day.
Bounty Law.
Bounty Law.
All right, who we got for haters this week? So, unsubscribes. What do we got, Anthony? Anyone good?
Oh yeah, totally.
Who is it?
We got some. Hold on,
He's pulling it up on his phone.
All right, I got it. This is a good one. We got a lot of toxic hate on our. I posted a video about BB-8 behind the scenes and how to show the scenes of BB-8 moving on his own. There was a guy in green suit basically pushing like a ramp, not like a ramp, but like he had metal poles like a sled pushing BB-8 around, and then they erased the guy in the sled to show BB-8 alone in the film. There's so much hate on that video.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But one of them was just crazy. This guy, One Law BOOO and whatever, he wrote, just like mainstream news, fake, and gave me and put a middle finger emoji.
You put a video of it behind the scenes.
I don't know how it's fake news. I mean, it's literally a behind the scenes video from The Force Awakens, like DVD. It's crazy. Man, these people are wild. All right, and then we have so Wadsy actually pointed out this really great Easter egg in Bullet Train. They said, you can't believe you guys didn't notice that Lemon put the Percy sticker on Logan Lerman, who played Percy Jackson.
Oh.
Very disappointed. If you guys weren't so awesome, I would have to unsubscribe. But luckily, they're still with us. But that was a great, I didn't even notice that. So great Easter egg right there. That was an awesome one.
Cool. We have a great 5-star review from Kyle Stan. Best podcast out there. Absolutely love the podcast. I've listened to almost every episode, and some of them I've listened to multiple times. As a side note, Quentin Tarantino started a podcast going through old films, and I think you guys would find it pretty interesting. Heard about that. He does it with another guy. They have like a VHS.
Oh, I love that.
And they like go through old movies.
I think it's a guy if I remember, it's a guy he might have worked with at the video store.
I think
that he's still friends with.
Something like that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into it.
On this day in film history, today is... Oh, I'm sorry. We forgot about Godfather patron. Who is it?
Our Godfather patron for today is Saul Aguelo. Saul! Thank you for becoming a Godfather patron.
The day of Empire Strikes Back
We made you an offer you couldn't
became
refuse.
a Godfather patron.
But this allows us to do the show full time, so we appreciate your support so much, Saul. Big supporter of the show. And Saul chose actually a really cool movie for their bonus review, Jeepers Creepers.
Oh, I love Jeepers Creepers.
Super underrated horror film.
Man, that was a cool movie when we were kids.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I can't wait to do that bonus review for you, pal. Thank you so much for supporting us. It means the world to us.
That truck the guy drives, Jeepers drives, is crazy.
I love this the guy. He's just like, he's got this like Western style, like he's got the hat and he's got the big coat.
I feel like they could make a new version of that. That's really
have. There's actually been a bunch. They're all just like mediocre. The sequels.
There's a lot of potential here with that character.
Yeah, I think so too.
Man, they just can't get any new horror characters going for more than one movie.
Movie monsters, it seems like it's a problem. Except for Krasinski.
Sinister bombed the second film was a dud. The Jeepers Creepers sequels were duds. Like, I mean, Don't Breathe was almost the next one.
Insidious is mostly pretty good.
I like the first one, but the other
Conjuring does a good job, but I think with movie
those are different. That's possession. And
so movie monsters. It's hard to nail a sequel. I think really the Quiet Place 1 and 2. Quiet Place 1 and 2 are the only ones to have a great sequel with movie monster.
That's a little different, I would say, because it's partially a prequel and also it's like an invasion of aliens.
Number 2?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I guess
it's an ongoing story versus like not that the other ones aren't, but like another part 2 of.
I disagree.
Like Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that. With
it says part 2 in the title.
One movie monster.
It's not in part 2, except it is.
Not a herd taking over the entire planet. I mean, one monster. One villain.
Okay,
a Michael Myers, a Freddy Krueger.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
We
were talking about singular characters, then you brought up an invasion of an entire
planet.
planet.
You said it's not like a part 2.
I meant, all right, you know what? Let's move on to...
Got him!
On this day, it's on the tape. On this day in film history, today is August 29th, and not much happened today. In 1998, the Disney classic Brink.
Wait, August 29th?
Yeah.
Oh my God. We're filming this ahead of schedule. I'm sorry.
August 29th, 1990. Let me shut up. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth.
Seriously, shut your mouth. In 1998, Brink came out, In 2012, Lawless came out. You got anything to say about that, Anthony?
Sean Hillcoat's awesome.
Happy birthday to the late Ingrid Bergman and also Richard Attenborough. That's about it for today.
Oh, wow. 2 awesome directors.
My streaming recommendation for this episode on August 29th is Eyes Wide Shut, was put on Netflix for August. I don't know if it'll be gone by the time the next month rolls around with September. So get a viewing in before it's gone.
Yeah, get that viewing in, guys. I recommend Prey on Hulu. It's a really great take on the Predator franchise. A very satisfying new version and fresh introduction for new characters into the story and the lore. It was a lot of fun. I recommend you check it out on Hulu.
Now let's get to how we talked about earlier, how Mark Hamill in real life had a severe motorcycle accident. He almost lost his life, but he ended up having facial reconstructive surgery to repair the damage done to his face. And this was not originally part of the script with the Wampa attack on Luke, but Lucas had to figure out a way to insert something to explain why Mark Hamill's face looks pretty different now compared to A New Hope. He had extensive surgery. He still looks great. It came out well, but you can tell there's a noticeable difference with his cheekbones and everything like that, and his chin, and his lips, and nose. And so they came up with the idea for the Wampa attack to account for his facial surgery. Fit in perfectly with the story and the script. And, Mark Hamill was very worried about the situation. He thought his career was completely over by the time it just started, really. This was like his big role. He's a superstar. He's Luke freaking Skywalker. Horrible motorcycle accident, but fortunately, Lucas and everyone else was able to figure out a way around it and implement it into the story.
It's I think it's like a really ingenious way to do it, where you believe it in the story, it works. Also, having him being rescued by Han gives Han an heroic moment. Shows how his character has really changed, where once again he's given the option of he wants to get out of there because Jabba's after him for a ton of money. And then once again, Han shows the true heroism he has inside of him by saving Luke. Also, seeing him wield the lightsaber was really cool. It's the first time, the only time that happens in the entire series, I think, Han Solo.
For Han?
Yeah, for Han holding a lightsaber.
I think so.
And also, when Han cuts open that animal and stores Luke inside of its stomach to stay warm, that was actually inspired by the story of Hugh Glass, which the movie, Leonardo DiCaprio's movie, The Revenant, was based on. It's an old Native American story about Hugh Glass, who we all know was mauled by a bear, and then he crawled hundreds of miles to take vengeance on those who left him there. And in reality, in part of that story is he did hide inside like an elk or some kind of animal he killed. And so Lucas used that as
a horse in a movie.
Horse in the movie. And Lucas used that story as inspiration for Han storing Luke inside the belly of that beast, which I really love. It's that connection to Hugh Glass, to the Revenant, which is pretty wild.
The Empire Strikes Back is the first film of the trilogy that actually feels like a war we talked about earlier. We have the battle sequences in space in the first one, but now we have a ground attack. We have a ground battle, and the Empire seems stronger than ever, even though they had their Death Star destroyed. First feeling of war. The Rebel Alliance base Echo on Hoth is taken over, like we said. And actually, this film was shot on location in Finns, Norway, and there was a fierce snowstorm that hit the hotel where the cast and crew were staying. Normally, this would have shut down production for a few days until everything got cleared up, but director Irvin Kershner thought these weather conditions were perfect and an excellent opportunity to capture some realistic scenes where Luke wanders through the snow after escaping the Wampa cave. He did this by sending Mark Hamill outside in the cold during the snowstorm while he and a cameraman stayed and filmed inside the hotel's front hall.
I love that. That's just great, smart filmmaking. Obviously, the seasoned veteran understanding, like, this is a great opportunity. And I love the sequence. I love seeing the snow, seeing the ice, seeing this planet, and to be such a stark contrast from desert and heat and emptiness. I thought it was just really brilliant. The cinematography is stunning. It just opens with these great landscape shots, and I really adored the sequence. I think it's really special. And there's a reason why they returned to it. Didn't Last Jedi have a sequence in Hoth?
Did it?
I think so.
Let me check. Keep talking.
Yeah, double check that. But I just think it's strong filmmaking. It's a great way to start the film. And I love the sequence where Luke's being held captive by the Wampa. and it's a sequence where we see him using the Force to grab his lightsaber, which we hadn't seen before. And things like that. It's just really practical, simple filmmaking. What they did was they had Mark Hamill, he's hanging upside down. They just had him throw the lightsaber away, and then they reverse the footage, and it looks like it's a very simple effect of the lightsaber going into his hand. So I love the practical filmmaking they used.
Yeah, they didn't go back to Hoth. I think you're just thinking because it's a remake, and they did it with the Battle of Crate.
Yeah, Crate, yeah.
And the relationships between the trio are what give this movie so much heart. Han and Luke, they seem like a big brother, little brother dynamic. It's great, it's sweet, it's sincere. Even though Han gets jealous about Leia kissing
Harrison's hilarious
Luke,
in this movie.
he still like doesn't let it get to him. He's like, he knows it's like, he's like, take it easy, kid. Don't worry about it. Like, it's not your fault. But they have big brother, little brother. He seems protective of Luke. He still calls him kid. And like Anthony said, he has a great arc where he's about to leave and abandon the rebellion, but he goes to save Luke because he cares about Luke. Then Han and Leia, they're starting to reveal their feelings for each other. Han's much more vocal about it and wants Leia to admit that she feels the same way about him that he does about her, but she's hiding it and pushing it down, deep down, and pissing Han off because of it. And eventually he pisses her off so much that Leia kisses Luke pretty intensely in front of Han just to piss him off. Now, did George Lucas know that they were brother and sister at this point? He did not, even though they kissed twice in this movie. At this point, neither the characters, the actors, the audience, nor Star Wars creator George Lucas himself knew that Luke and Leia were actually going to be brother and sister. The idea that they were siblings came into being during the writing of the next Star Wars film, The Return of the Jedi. At the end of Empire, Leia also gives Luke a little peck after bringing him aboard the Millennium Falcon, subsequent to his confrontation with Vader when his hand was cut off. This is clearly just a comforting get better kiss, not really any romantic implications behind it. And she only kisses Luke to piss Han off.
Yeah, I see people are always like making fun of how messed up it is. It's like they didn't know. They don't know. It's not like they're knowingly doing it. And I think it's really smart to make Leia the twin, and it probably wouldn't have worked to include another major character in return. So that's probably why they chose to make Leia the twin. And then we get that great tease by Yoda. There is another.
It's our final hope. There is another. There is another.
But I really love the Dagobah sequences. I love Yoda. He's fantastic, and what a great character and performance by Frank Oz. But I like how Yoda, he has this complete 180 turn, because we were first introduced to him. He's like this silly, goofy little dude, and he's not being very helpful. He just seems to be, he just seems to be messing with Luke, and he's driving Luke crazy.
He gets in a fight with R2-D2.
Yeah, he gets in a fight with R2-D2. He just seems like this zany little guy, and Luke's like tired of. He's like, I've had it. He's like, he can't stand it anymore. And then he basically shouts a couple of times at Yoda, and then all of a sudden Yoda turns serious, speaking to Obi-Wan. Not ready, he is. And he's like, because he's talking. It was all a test. Yoda was testing Luke's patience, and Luke clearly didn't have any patience, which is a bad sign for a Jedi of being of possibly falling into the dark side. And it's an important virtue to have patience and control over your emotions, obviously. But I love how Yoda has this test for Luke. The first thing he ever does with Luke is testing him. And Luke actually does fail that test.
Yoda is one of the best parts of this movie. And it was a complete risk, you could say. Even though Star Wars is very successful, it's full of exotic characters, brought to life with prosthetics and other effects. This was making a major character out of a puppet that needed to be emotional, give great dialogue, give monologues, and be very inspirational at the same time as being a puppet in 1980. The puppet was originally designed and built by Stuart Freeborn for Lucasfilm and ILM. In fact, 4 versions of Yoda had to be built for Empire, each designed for specific shots. These included a puppet designed to be manipulated by world-famous puppeteer Frank Oz, who also did the voice. We all know him for Miss Piggy. 2 radio-controlled versions for longer shots, such as the scene where Yoda rides on Luke's back during his training on Dagobah, and a larger suit that could be worn by a diminutive actor and stunt performer, Deep Roy. A second animatronic head was also built in a mere 3 days by Nick Maley and Bob Keane. Yoda was voiced and puppeteered by Frank Oz, who also did the voice for the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy as well. Outside of the films, the character has been mainly voiced by Tom Kane, starting with the 2003 Clone Wars animated television series. George Lucas was so impressed by Frank Oz's performance as Yoda that he spent thousands of dollars on an advertising campaign to try to get him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. However, it didn't work out and failed exclusively. Lucas felt this wasn't fair to Oz, who didn't really care at the time. And this just shows you that people that are doing voices and puppet work back then, but now mocap work, for example, with Andy Serkis, they're so underappreciated by the Academy in terms of a critical acclamation and awards. According to StarWars.com, the original idea for portraying Yoda was to be a trained monkey in a costume to bring the wise and powerful Yoda to life. Apparently, the costumed monkey was to be trained to walk around the Dagobah set with Yoda's signature cane.
Interesting.
However, a lot of the crew that had worked previously with Stanley Kubrick on 2001: A Space Odyssey, when they actually tried to do a lot of those opening sequences with real monkeys, even though there are some baby monkeys in there in the actual movie, they found out that it was almost an impossible situation to deal with. They couldn't really film them. They couldn't really train them very properly to act on camera because they're animals. So that's why that movie mostly is actors in costume for 2001: A Space Odyssey, as well as some little baby monkeys here and there. But they scrapped the idea. They didn't even really try it. The producers and filmmakers that had experience with it were like, nah, bro, we can't do that.
Yeah, and him having like his little limbs, and that makes it work. Like if he had these huge long arms, it would have been like, I don't know, it doesn't feel the same.
It's tough to train a monkey to be like, all right, look over there, monkey. It's tough, and probably would have been horrible for animal rights in terms of what they probably would have put the monkey through. It would have been intense and really unfair to the monkey. And also, you could also argue that the success of Yoda, the acceptance of the audience of this puppeteered, very important integral character to the story, led to the possibility of more puppeteered characters in the future of film. For example, the Never-Ending Story with Falkor never probably would have been pulled off if they didn't see that it worked so well with Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, Falkor is great.
Goated.
Are you going? Do you prefer puppet Yoda or CGI Yoda?
I like puppet Yoda. Give me the OG original Yoda.
Yeah. I love puppet Yoda too, but there are instances where the CGI Yoda is just necessary, like when he fights Count Dooku.
Yeah.
And that's a badass fight.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's a great fight.
You can't do that with a puppet.
Yeah, there's no way. Like seeing Yoda ignite his lightsaber, I was like, oh crap! It's pretty crazy.
When he walks into his office.
Yeah. No, when he fights Dooku and
oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking about Palpatine.
But then he has a great fight with Palpatine too. So I know people complain about the CGI Yoda, but it would have been impossible to do that, to do the fight sequences, because Yoda fighting in the prequels are some of the best moments of the prequels. And so, I mean, as a CGI character, it was a necessity, and there's still no way to do that without making it CGI, because he's literally jumping around all over the place, and he's so fast. So I don't mind the CGI Yoda as much as other people do, because of the physicality of the role in terms of the prequels compared to the original. But I love the puppet Yoda, and I really like how Rian Johnson brought puppet Yoda back for Last Jedi. I think that was a highlight of the movie. Like when he showed up, the entire crowd was elated. You could feel it, and everyone was laughing. So I think that, and also it feels like the interpretation of Yoda in the prequels is much more stoic, and the puppet Yoda in the originals and in Last Jedi, he has a lot of that humor and that goofiness still to him as part of his personality. We don't really see that in the prequels. He's all just super serious, but in this one, in Last Jedi, you can see that playful nature that Yoda has.
Well, he's serious when they're training.
Yeah.
From that point on, he's very serious. When he's speaking with Obi-Wan, he kind of loses the goofiness and silliness and the silly jokes here and there, because he's nothing but wisdom after that.
That's a good point.
You could argue. Yeah. It's so interesting to see how powerful this little green creature was at one point. He's not even in his prime. He's almost 800. He's 800 years old. Training Jedi, 800 years I have. So it's pretty incredible. That's why the fight sequences to finally see what Yoda can do was one of the most exciting things for diehard Star Wars fans to see in that prequel trilogy who've been watching it for decades. And finally we get to see what he can do, because you could argue that him lifting the X-Wing out of the lake was his last bit of life force, maybe this last intense use of the force, of his
great
powers,
yeah,
which led to maybe a quicker death, and that's why he's maybe so hesitant to do it at first. But he knows while he's doing it, like, this is gonna kill me at some point, but I have to do it to show him that it's not impossible, that it's not about the size of the rock or the ship. It's just about everything in your mind.
You ask for the impossible. It's a great sequence. And what I love about Yoda's story in this film is we learn a lot more about the Force. And Yoda's explaining so much to Luke, and it's basically explaining to the audience too. That's why it works so well. Understanding how it works, how it can flow through Luke, how Luke can manipulate it, can hone it, to bend it to use it as a tool and as a weapon. I really love the training sequence. It's a lot of fun. I like Luke being isolated, and it's just a great moment for Luke. And then I love in return when he shows up and he's just got the black Jedi suit and he's like a full-on Jedi. But these are like the early steps to becoming that version of himself.
You can seriously see the influence of Dagobah with Luke being trained by Yoda and explaining everything to the audience, with the Matrix with Morpheus and Neo. The similarities are immense, just explaining what the Matrix is versus what the Force is, and training sequences, the black suit at the end, Neo's black suit at the end when he's finally the one, with Luke having the black suit and outfit when he's finally mastered being a Jedi. It's really interesting. And in addition to learning about the Force, we learn more about the dark side from Yoda, about how hate and fear lead to the dark side, and he makes Luke face his fears. And Luke says, he's like, I'm not afraid. He's like, you will be. You will be.
South Park spoofed that really well. I can't remember what the moment was, but they did a great spoof of that.
And Jedi are masters of being calm and staying at peace. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. There is no why. Do or do not, there is no try. So many great pieces of wisdom we get told by Yoda to the audience as well as to Luke.
And also Luke, I mean, we learned that Obi-Wan had a lot of similarities to Luke because at first Yoda's reluctant to start training Luke because he's so old and he's impatient and he's got a lot of angst and emotion in him. But Obi-Wan says multiple times, "Was I so different?" And it's fun to see that Obi-Wan was reckless as a young man too, because we've always known Obi-Wan generally to be always making the right call and right decision for the most part. So I like how Obi-Wan is giving us a little more backstory about himself and how he went through this and how Yoda at first had trouble training Obi-Wan.
Yeah, like when Luke wouldn't stop playing Fortnite and Obi-Wan was like, was I so different?
Addicted to the game you are.
Speaking of Obi-Wan, obviously his role was done again by Alec Guinness, and Alec Guinness actually only worked for one day on this movie. It's so ironic, like how much he hated working on Star Wars with how much money he made from it and how much fans love him. So during principal photography, it remained unclear if Sir Alec Guinness would return as Obi-Wan, as he had just had an eye operation at the time. He finally did agree and worked just one day on the movie. Wednesday, September 5th, 1979. He arrived at 8:30 a.m. to record lines and footage for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he completed his scenes by 1 p.m., for which he was paid 0.25 percentage point of the movie's gross, which was worth millions of dollars.
That's a lot.
So 5.5 hours, he probably made $2 million.
Oh my God, maybe more.
That's insane.
Probably way more.
Made $583 million.
Yeah, but then gross DVD sales, VHS sales.
That's crazy. So
yeah,
he might have pulled $10 million for 5 hours of work.
I'm guessing $20 million over time.
Insane.
At least.
He made so much money off Star Wars.
I mean, he's after the first one because
he made 2%.
Yeah, he signed a 2% deal with the first one, and then he's such an important character for the lore. So they're like, they gotta have him. So I guess his agent was like able to demand this, and man, good for him, because he worked for like 30 years and he did probably 30 years of work and never made a fraction of what he made for Star Wars for just such a little work, which is really an awesome story for Alec Guinness.
We're also introduced to a couple of new really important characters in The Empire Strikes Back. Obviously, Boba Fett, the bounty hunter hired by Darth Vader, has become a huge fan favorite. He's finally got his own TV show after they brought him back from the dead from surviving the Sarlacc pit, which we'll get into in The Return of the Jedi. But also we have Palpatine, who we now learn, like Anthony said earlier, that Darth Vader has a master himself. It is Palpatine, and he's worried about this young boy who just destroyed the Death Star. He's the offspring of Anakin Skywalker. The Force is strong with him. He must not become a Jedi. He must join us or die. And he's convincing Darth Vader that, like, search your feelings to know it to be true. You know he's your son. You know he's the son of Anakin Skywalker. We haven't gotten the reveal yet.
I'm sorry, just a quick on Boba Fett. I thought it was really cool how Lucas obviously is famous for tinkering after the fact, but one of the best decisions he had was he actually had Tamora Morrison, who plays Boba Fett, do voice work on Empire and Return, so it blends in together with him because we know him as Boba Fett in the prequel trilogy. So I thought it was great to have his voice in the new release of this film.
Gotcha. Good point. And then also we have Lando Calrissian, who is Han Solo's old friend, we hope, and we realize they are buds, and we learn that Calrissian is an old gambler, an old friend of Han's, and Han beat him in a bet to win the Falcon. That's how he has his ship. Calrissian calls it his ship. Calrissian's another male character who objectifies the hell out of Princess Leia in this entire franchise. But Billy Williams is super charismatic, super charming, a lot of fun.
He's Billy D. Williams.
I'm sorry, Billy D. Williams. More charming than even Han Solo in a lot of respects. Also an ambiguous character. We don't know if he's going to help or save them or betray them. He eventually betrays them out of protection for his city that he's in control of, but then eventually changes sides again after he hands Leia and Han to Darth Vader. He helps Leia and Leia escape eventually.
Yeah, Lando's a great character, and I love Cloud City. It's a terrific design and concept, and the team did an amazing job of bringing that location to life. And also, I like Lando. He's a great character because he's not one note. He's three-dimensional. Even though he has a short amount of screen time in the franchise, an impact was really made, and also such an important aspect of the lore. But he's a guy who you can't trust, but you can trust him.
Like Han.
He's just like Han. He has that heart. He has the hero inside of him, but he has, a rocky journey to get there. And yes, he does betray them, but it's out of the safety and protection of his own people. So it's like, would you make the same? Would you choose differently? I mean, the Empire would probably slaughter his entire city if he didn't decide to help them. So his hands really were tied, and then he did prove himself by helping him get out, and then also in return. And then it was great to see him in Rise of Skywalker. I thought it was so surprising and a lot of fun to see him show up.
And it's great to get some more of an origin story for Lando, a little bit with him featured in Solo, the Han Solo movie, which is a lot of fun. Hopefully Glover can play the character again. I thought he was phenomenal as young Lando Calrissian. Now let's get back. Well, let's finally talk about Darth Vader in detail, because he has a lot more screen time in this film. He's introduced on Hoth, walking through the shards of the battle like a total badass, and it's really incredible just to see him not on a ship. It's really great to see him on ground somewhere on a planet looking for somebody in a frozen planet. He is savage in this movie. He force chokes to death anybody who fails him. So is it two commanding officers that get choked to death by him with the
I love when he chokes the first one and he's like, then he goes to the other one, you're in charge now. That guy's like, crap.
And then he fails him too, and then he gets force choked to death as well.
I love the character development of Vader in this film. Like we mentioned earlier, showing that he is actually an inferior to his master Palpatine. But there are so many Easter eggs to the reveal that we see at the end. I love how he's not just like this kind of like this one-note supervillain. And then we see by the end when it's revealed that Luke is his son, you see the pull, and then you understand why Vader even suggested trying to turn him and trying to train Luke to become a member of the dark side. And you can see that's the first hint of, love and humanity within him, even though Palpatine's like, yeah, sounds good, bro, let's give it a shot. He's like, do you think it will work? And then it's Vader saying, I don't want to kill my son. That's that's the subtext of him offering to try and train Luke Skywalker and turn him to the dark side.
Well, he does say he'll join us or die.
He says that.
Yeah.
He also says multiple times that he's going to kill him, and then he spares his life at the end of this film, obviously. He could have taken him out, no problem, but he tried to talk Luke into it. I think deep down, it's the father in him not wanting to kill his son. And it's all in like basically subtle subtext in his story arc.
Well, also when they're talking after Luke is hanging off that little pillar after he reveals who he is to Luke, he says we can destroy the Emperor. So he wants to take out the Emperor so they can rule father and son. So there is some humanity left inside of him. Like you said, he does not want to kill his son. It's kind of going to be like a very last resort. And unfortunately, we know what happens at the end of Return of the Jedi. But James Earl Jones obviously returned to voice Vader. He's still doing it, which is wild. As with Star Wars, he declined a credit, though, because he considers himself special effects to David Prowse's physical performance. So that's really respectful to not take a credit as Darth Vader, give it to David Prowse. James Earl Jones earned $15,000 for half a day's work, plus a small percentage of the profits.
That's a lot. That's so much. The hourly on that.
The hourly on him and Alec
become
Guinness,
like $10 million an hour.
Him and Alec Guinness both worked half a day and made probably $10 million just from this movie, easy.
What's really fascinating about the reveal is that a lot of people who worked on the movie didn't even know about the twist of Luke being his father. And Lucas didn't even tell Mark Hamill until right before they filmed the scene, because Hamill, the lines written in the script were different. The lines written in the script were Vader saying, "I killed your father." That's what they had on the page. So nobody knew that. And then right before they filmed the scene, George Lucas went to Mark Hamill and he's like, this is the actual line. He's going to say, I am your father.
He even gave David Prowse different dialogue as well as Vader.
Yeah, David Prowse. On set, David Prowse, I said, "I killed your father." And Mark Hamill's reacting to that basically on the day. And so I thought it was just a great idea to not even majority of the people who worked on the film knew this. And then at the premiere, Mark Hamill told this great story on a talk show. I think it was Kimmel maybe. And then he said that he was watching the premiere of Empire with Harrison Ford beside him. And then that scene came up and Darth Vader revealed that he was his father. And then Harrison Ford whispered to Mark Hamill, "You didn't tell me that happened." He didn't even know. Harrison Ford didn't even know that was the twist. So it was a great way of keeping it under wraps, keeping it a secret, which is, I think, a brilliant move.
The battle sequence is great. There's a lot more lightsaber fighting compared to the previous film with Obi-Wan versus Vader. Mark Hamill did extensive training. He was doing fencing, martial arts, lifting weights, all just to get in shape for this role. Lots of sword fighting. Obviously, this is a great 10, 15-minute sequence of him being lured by Vader to the trap on Cloud City after he freezes Han Solo and Carbonite. And it's a great battle where clearly Darth Vader is more powerful than Luke. Like you said, he could have killed him if he wanted to. He's keeping him alive. He's trying to convert him to the dark side as a last resort because he doesn't want to kill his son. At least maybe I can make him turn to the dark side. But like you said earlier, the cinematography, really iconic imagery. Probably the greatest shot in Star Wars franchise history is the silhouette of their lightsabers glowing on that set. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and you have the orange and blue contrasting with so much of the dark midtones and blacks of the image. It's really stunning. And I like, it's like you could say, why is Vader looks like he's trying to kill Luke during the fight? Like, how is he trying to spare him?
Impressive.
I think, impressive. I think that Vader's trying to infuriate Luke, trying to frustrate him, trying to get him emotional by dominating him in the fight, but not killing him. Like I think that he knows he's trained. He knows how to fight. So if I swing at him, I'm not gonna chop his head off. And so I think that Vader's whole intent with the fight is to bring the emotions out of Luke, make him feel desperate, and basically dominate him. And it'll be easier to convince him into joining me. So I think that's why Vader is intense in that fight, and he seems to be trying to kill him. But I think ultimately he understands, like, I need to break him down, get him to his lowest point, make him fail, see there's no point in trying to fight me, and then maybe he'll turn on my side.
Make him angry, make him fearful. Mm-hmm. Like, use that hate to destroy me. He says, use your hate, which is a temptation into the dark side. So you're absolutely right.
And the sets in this sequence are amazing. There's 4 terrific, beautiful sets that the crew made. They've become synonymous with Star Wars history. When you Google Vader and Luke battle, you have that great, amazing, expansive set of the bottom half of the Cloud City. All these beautiful lights. It looks like it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meters wide and in scope. And then they're just on this huge platform in the middle of the air. It's just really wonderful.
And the battle and the sequence itself is kind of like a cat and mouse game, just like the entire movie has been for Vader trying to catch Luke and the Emperor trying to catch Luke, where, you know, Luke's evading the attacks and going in different locations and sets. So it's actually kind of a great metaphor for the entire plot of the film as well.
Love it, man.
Love it.
You put that together, dude. Wow.
And like we said at the beginning, hope is lost. Han Solo getting frozen in carbonite is so dramatic and emotional. And actually, that was not the original plan. George Lucas froze Han Solo in carbonite because Harrison Ford was not signed on to the next film and was contemplating not joining Return of the Jedi. Lucas intended for the Rebel to fly off with Chewbacca on the Millennium Falcon at the end of Empire Strikes Back, with the plan to return to his full capacity in Return of the Jedi. However, Lucas decided to stall the character's arc by freezing Han Solo in carbonite. So unlike his co-stars Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford was only contracted for one Star Wars sequel. The actor was unsure about reprising the role due to his growing popularity and his involvement in Indiana Jones. At one point, Ford had hoped that Han would be killed off in the sequel through some kind of heroic, sacrificial way. Lucas and Star Wars writers wanted to keep their options open, however. By freezing Han in carbonite, they left open the opportunity for the character to return, but they also planted a seed in case Ford never signed on for Return of the Jedi. Star Wars producer Howard Kazanjian ended up being the one to convince Ford to reprise his role for the third film in the original trilogy. Kazanjian worked with Ford on Indiana Jones, and the men were on good terms, and he clearly made the correct points to change Ford's mind.
I also want to know what the correct points of the salary were. What was his contract for the third one? What did they offer him just to get him back?
An extra zero. Think about it.
I'm because the thing is, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher signed on for 3, so their deal was done, and Harrison. He probably had so much sway and to be like, you guys are gonna pay me if you want me for the third one. I guarantee he got a fat check.
And he's like, I'm Indiana Jones. Like, this is bigger than Han Solo at the time, and I think it's still
because he's not a lead. I think he was really like, I just want to be the lead actor of movies. So that could be a reason why he didn't want to come back, because it wasn't his show, basically, And he's obviously went on to become one of the most legendary leading actors of all time,
if not the most legendary leading actor of all time. It's crazy.
I think could be considered the greatest movie star.
It's up there. He's top 10 for sure all time. He absolutely is. Especially like if Gen Zers don't realize, like, go back to the 80s, 90s. This guy,
Harrison Ford was the guy
on top of the world.
He was the guy for a long time. Yeah, for a long time.
He was the guy for a long time. Luke has a bunch of great characteristics in this film as well, in addition to everything he's gone through with failing and then hopefully succeeding. But we see more uses of the Force and more powers of the Force. I really like the mind battle he has against Darth Vader on Dagobah, where he has to face his fears and then he cuts off Vader's head and his face is inside of it. It's a metaphor saying that, his father or like his bloodline is Darth Vader.
I think I look at that as Luke is afraid of becoming like Vader, afraid of the dark side. So that's how I interpret that. He's afraid of becoming a bad person.
He also has visions of the future. I like how Lucas doesn't show us it, but Luke just sees it. He's seeing the future. He's asking if Yoda if his friends are going to die or not, because clearly Yoda's seeing glimpses of the future as well. And this is why he decides to leave Dagobah early to not finish his Jedi training to save his friends, which is a major characteristic of Luke, of never abandoning his friends, even though he does for a little bit. But he has to go back and save them. And even though Obi-Wan and Yoda try to convince him that he must finish his training, he's not ready to face Darth Vader, he still does it anyways.
Yeah, it's a testament to Luke, and Yoda and other Jedi are worried about the emotion of passion, the emotion of love, and how it can turn someone like Anakin, how he was turned. But Luke, he has the same, I think, level of emotion, same level of ability to love and passion as Anakin, but he never, I think he's so much stronger than Anakin, where he never lets it take him over. And it's always a positive love, and he's willing to sacrifice himself to save others. That's something maybe Anakin wasn't willing to do for most of his life. The ability to put your life on the line to save a friend. Maybe Anakin probably put himself before others when he was older.
Han, Leia, and Chewie on the run from the Empire. It's a lot more entertaining, obviously, than what they did in the new trilogy. Yeah. And I love when they're hiding out on the supposed asteroid. They're flying through the asteroid storm and everything like that. It's really fun and campy at the same time. This is after Han and Leia actually kiss for the first time, which is really emotional as well. And they finally are meeting each other.
And C-3PO shows up.
Yeah. Thanks. That's just swell. And I love how the asteroid ends up being an organic being, as well as all those bats inside of it. It's really fun. It's campy, and it still holds up today. And I believe that at the time, George Lucas was overworking the visual effects crew, and they were upset about it, having to constantly redo the sequence. One of them ended up putting a shoe inside the asteroid belt sequence, as well as a potato. But they have been changed since then.
I love how Boba Fett is trailing right behind them, and they don't notice. He's like right behind them when they fly away. It's pretty funny to see. But I love the creativity of that giant monster, and I love the scene where C-3PO suggests to Han like a certain way to fix a certain thing, and Han just like chews him out, and then he turns to Chewie up in the rafters. He's like, I think we should probably replace the blah blah blah. And then we got the C-3PO looks at him like, are you serious, bro?
And R2-D2 has a lot to do in this movie as well. Not only does he help fix the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon after it was disabled by the Empire, leading to that guy obviously probably getting force choked off screen later on. But R2 is with Luke on his journey to Dagobah. He has some great sequences and funny moments with Yoda where they're fighting over the flashlight and Yoda's smashing him in the head. Mine. In that entire sequence where R2-D2 is actually in that mud pond was filmed in George Lucas's unfinished pool, and Lucas actually filmed that entire sequence.
Movie magic, bro. Movie magic.
All you need is a little bit of location. That's it.
I think one of the strengths of this film, and what separates it from the other two films in this trilogy and many in the sequels as well, is there isn't a giant ship to take down. There's no Death Star. It's not some just like huge battle at the end, and we gotta save everyone, or else it's all over. What makes this film special is that the emotional stakes are what supersede everything else, and there isn't a huge battle at the end. There's plenty of fighting and stuff. There isn't a Death Star to destroy. There isn't a mission to blow something up. The mission is Luke going after Vader, and I love that. I love how much smaller it is. I love how the stakes of the film are not massive. It's more emotional. And I think that really is what separates this from many of the other films, especially New Hope and Return, where both films end with the climactic battle of taking down a Death Star. But not having a Death Star, I think, is a strength to this movie and sets it apart in a big way.
They know that it's the second act.
Yeah.
You know, even though there's a 3-act structure in this film, like most stories in most films, it is the second act of a trilogy. It doesn't have the same climax as the first one or the third one had. But I think that's why it has so much heart, like you said. It's more about the character development and their relationships more than anything. And that's why I think it's so special. I think that's why people love it so much. This is like really the connective tissue of the original trilogy. This is why the third one's so special. Obviously, you can't have Empire without A New Hope, but this one really brings the emotionality to the film and the stories and the characters.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I prefer this kind of third act. It's because like just Vader and Luke. That it's special, you know. I think it's really, really fantastic, and a great tidbit about Palpatine, because Palpatine we don't see in the flesh until Return, and then it's just like a whole another element that's just fantastic once we see him. But the initial role of Palpatine was actually performed by someone else, a different actor. It was actually an older actress, and what they did was they covered her in a ton of prosthetics. And they also superimposed the eyes of, I believe, a chimpanzee over her eyes in the hologram, and completely different actor. And that was the original Emperor Palpatine that audiences saw in theaters. And then when Lucas cast Ian, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, the actor who plays Vader, the Emperor. He's played the Emperor physically in all of the iterations of the character. He loved the performance so much that he had this actor redo the scenes for Empire and digitally put them into the footage of Empire. So the original cut of Empire had a different actor playing Palpatine.
Ian McDiarmid is the actor who does Palpatine now. You're right. And this movie, when you watch it, and it's similar to the Two Towers in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where it's not a conclusion. There are some big events that happen in the third act of the film, but overall, it's not the same kind of climax that the first one or the third one has. But it's just a continuation of the story, moving the characters forward. More emotional points of the film happen in development for important characters. Like you could say the development of Gollum is one of the most important parts of the Two Towers going into the third film, just like the development of Palpatine and Vader are really important going into the third one
Taking down Saruman, I mean. So taking over Isengard. And what makes it different from Lord of the Rings is I think all the Lord of the Rings movies are amazing. But if I was going to have to rank them, I would put Two Towers last. But that's not saying it's in any way, shape, or form that I have anything against it, because I think it's a perfect movie. But I just think that Fellowship and Return are just amazing. Whereas this trilogy, I think it's like the second one, I think in a lot of ways, is probably the best out of the three. Which is different
It
from Lord
probably
of the
is.
Rings. Yeah.
I would say it's probably the best, but I still think Return's my favorite. And even New Hope's great as
Return
well.
is a lot of fun. Because Return brought the humor back and the fun back.
And Luke's a Jedi Master.
Luke just showing up as a Jedi Master is like, oh my God, this is so cool. But then it's so playful with the Ewoks, and those sequences on that planet are really fantastic.
I love the Ewoks. They're so fun.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a trilogy, Desert Island, Lord of the Rings trilogy, or are you going Star Wars original trilogy?
Lord of the Rings.
Yes, sir.
No, I don't even have to think
We
about
love
it.
Star Wars, but Lord of the Rings is just
Special.
three perfect
Special
movies.
to me. Special to
They
me.
really are.
Yeah.
But that doesn't. There's nothing against Star Wars. Star
So
Wars.
you hate Star Wars is what you're saying.
So much.
You think Star Wars is trash.
So much.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here.
It's on record forever.
Yeah, it's in there.
Please insert sarcasm. Just kidding. We love Star Wars. That's why we're talking about it for the 17th time on the show.
Yeah.
Doing individual
It's
episodes.
going to be a lot
each
of
one.
episodes.
This was a lot of fun doing this one. So do you have anything else to add?
No, I just think we're going to watch Return again. I haven't seen Return as many times as I've seen the other, but I have
Should we
seen
watch
it a
it
lot.
tonight?
Yeah, why not watch it tonight?
Yeah, let's do it.
But at the moment, I think Empire is my favorite, especially after watching it again. But I'm looking forward to seeing Return. I'm looking forward to talking more about the rest of the franchise and how it ends. This is, I think, one of the greatest adventure sci-fi films ever made, and that will ever be made. And it's going to be hard to ever make things like this again, even with all the technology that we have nowadays. Obviously, filmmaking has advanced in such amazing ways, but still, it's all about the story and all about the characters, and that's what makes this one special.
And I love revisiting trilogies, franchises, big popular ones that are decades old over and over again, because I always have a different perspective of life, but also a different perspective when I watch them, and different feelings afterwards when they're over. I see things that I didn't never notice before, even if I've seen it 15 times. So I love revisiting the Star Wars trilogy, the original, so much. It's a lot of fun. It's a blast. I have different perspectives and ideas about it than the first time we covered the original trilogy, which was like a year and a half ago. So it's always great to revisit these. These are timeless. They're endlessly rewatchable. We'll be watching these in 50 years for sure. Hopefully we're still on this earth, me and Anthony, because we'll be pretty old men. We'll be 82. We'll be around.
We'll be alive.
We'll be alive.
Dude,
I'll still be running.
You know how much water I drink?
Yeah, the water, man.
Water's important, man.
We'll watch these in 50 years. We'll be on episode 17,000 of the show.
We won't make them like this anymore.
We'll be comparing the original trilogy to the 78th movie of the Star Wars franchise and seeing which ones are the best. But again, in 50 years, these will still be watched and loved as much as they are today, as much as they were in the 70s and 80s, because they are iconic, legendary films, some of the best in American cinema history, science fiction, fantasy lore, epic. One of the biggest, probably the biggest fan base in the planet, in the history of entertainment, for sure, is Star Wars.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well said, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Well, thanks everyone for tuning into our episode on Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Stay tuned for more. Next week we have Return of the Jedi on Monday, as well as last week, if you missed it, we did A New Hope. So stay tuned for those and check them out if you haven't seen them yet. Be sure to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Take care.
May the Force be with you all.
This episode of Raiders of the Lost Podcast was executive produced by our chosen one patrons: Luke Exelston, Tyler McFly, Darren Singleton, Anthony DeMeo, John Agraz, Becca Keene, Cody Moen, Calvin Cam, and Lauren Smertz. Thank you for watching Raiders of the Lost podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, notifications for sure. Listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you can listen to podcasts, and be sure to check out this other content we have on our YouTube channel.